Welcome to episode 6 of A Mile High and About to Die. I am one of your hosts.
Which one are you?
Alex. Alex Blum.
Zach Blum. No relation. Almost the same name.
Different names, different parents.
Kind of the same story, though, in a lot of ways.
In some ways.
Yeah, anonymity, is the spiritual tradition of all of our principles.
Ooh.
It's like, who am I? Who are you? I think we're the same. Oh my gosh.
It's like an anonymous sex party, but for healing.
Yes.
I love that.
It's a little moist.
Yeah.
Yeah, just get in there.
Willingness, step 6, A Mile High and About to Die. So, Zach, as always, we start with our step and our principle of this transformation masterclass. I don't know what that is, but it sounds like way above what I'm providing.
It's a lot of buzzwords right now, bro. Yeah, we're masters.
That's something you could be charging for.
Yeah, totally. But we're giving it away for free.
For free.
Yeah.
So tell me, Zach, you tell me step 6, and then I'm going to tell you the principle, and then let's talk more about the rest of it.
I like the plan. Step 6 is we're entirely ready to have God remove all these defects of character. And the principle?
Willingness, from the French willy.
Oh.
Which has to do with being cool.
Okay, there's been a lot of French words that we've talked about. Ressentiment and courage. We have the courage in our hearts, and we have a resentment, and we release. And... Yes.
So, okay. Couple things to break it down here. We're entirely ready. Seems interesting to be I'm prepared for you to give me $1 million, but I'm ready for it is interesting. And then, it's funny because it talks about these defects of character, but something must have happened where I know what these are if God's going to remove them, but how did I get there? I don't know. How did it happen? How did we get here at all?
Hang on. This is the 6th step. How many steps are there? There are 12.
Tough to say.
There's 12 steps. So this is the 6th one. So there's 5 before this. How about a quick recap?
Okay.
Step 1, honesty and acceptance. Those are the principles. If we're going to go, so we're in an honest environment. If we're going to be honest, maybe we're having trouble with something in our life. Maybe we need a new path. That would roll into step 2, right?
Courage.
No, that's your answer for everything.
Step 2 was became willing as a hope. That hope, you guys. Came to believe that a power greater than ourselves could restore sanity.
That's right.
And then, I got a problem. I'm honest about it. I got some hope. It could be better. Then what?
Then I'm going to jump in on a path that other people who have been looking, that had a similar problem to me, these people have a solution to it. I'm jumping all in. The solution might sound weird, but it would sound weird to my brain because my brain can't get past this problem. So these guys, they seem weird, but I'm going to jump in with them because they seem like they've gotten beyond the problem.
What's the principle?
Oh, right. The principle is faith. I'm going to have faith that if I follow that principle is going to work itself out.
Step 4 was?
Courage. And it's also, we made a searching and fearless moral inventory. We wrote down all the people that had harmed us, all the things that we were resentful at. And and in the 5th step, what did we do with that list?
We told God, ourselves, and somebody else about it. And
so we read that whole inventory out to someone, and we were looking specifically for what?
Our part in it.
Yeah, we were looking for where was I possibly contributing to all the things that have happened in my life, all the relationships.
And the principle?
That was integrity.
Intrigue.
Yeah, so it's kind of like we're going to face the darkness and we're going to actually learn what's really going on with ourselves. The monsters we may have been, unconsciously, we didn't realize we were being monsters. We could maybe sense a little bit that we were being a little selfish, but once we investigated, we saw actually the full extent of that, what kind of monsters we could have, been and all that. And now we take that monster and now we reintegrate that monster into working forward for us.
And when we found through that process is that we had some role in it, some kind of themes or consistent behaviors that we could call our defects of character.
Correct.
And now here in the step 6, we're saying, okay, we played some part in it and we're willing to be ready for something new. And please God, like help me get over these things that have plagued me throughout my life and have contributed to some of the outcomes I've had.
Exactly.
We're done. See you next time.
All right, steps 7 through 12, and the next one, just kidding. Yeah, so step 6 it talks about, so it's one paragraph in the original 1939 literature. There's one paragraph dedicated to step 6. And it's basically saying like, okay, you've made a beginning. Sit down and look. Have you missed anything in these first couple steps? These first 5 steps. Have you missed anything? Is there anything you need to go back and redo?
Right.
It's kind of a meditation of sorts.
It's kind of like, when you like put that protective cover on your phone and you want to make sure there's no dust or no dirt or anything before you add it. Otherwise, it's going to be stuck there on this new stuff. It's kind of like that. Like, let's really squeak this thing clean.
Okay, I don't like giving you compliments all that much. I actually do.
I like getting them.
That's a really good, I've never heard that one before.
I just thought of it.
Whoa, it just comes to you. Just sitting here in the spirit and out it pours. Okay, so so that one paragraph thing, it's one paragraph, but there is this supplemental material that came out about 15 years after the original material of the 12 steps called the 12 by 12 or 12 steps and 12 traditions. In there, this is an interesting thing. After 15 years of trying this stuff and, Alcoholics Anonymous slowly growing and different fellowships starting to form, the guy that, the 2 guys that wrote this, that wrote this book and started this whole thing, they actually wrote in this 12 and 12 later on, they said, the 6th step is the one that separates the men from the boys because it was a very patriarchal, mostly the people going to AA were men. Now it's, very diverse.
I think you get the point, despite the gendering. Okay.
Yes.
So, go on.
So for some reason, us looking at our character defects is the difference between me staying a child emotionally and me growing up, I think is what it's trying to say.
Right.
And it has to do with willingness.
Right. It's kind of like, am I going to keep sitting in those same behaviors that have been protective for me, like self-pity or depression or sloth or whatever? Or am I going to take the reins of my own life and do something new? Exactly.
Okay, so you touched on a couple of these terms, and I'd like to kind of invite everybody to join along with us. What are these defects of character, okay? Like when we were in that 4th column of our 4th step, doing our inventory and telling someone else what's really going on with us, we were able to identify the 4 big ones, the 4 that we start with are selfishness, when I'm looking for my part, I should say. The 4 big ones are selfishness, self-centeredness, dishonesty, and fear. So these are, when I'm acting out of these types of, those are character defects. Now you can break into them and find more of them, but these are really kind of like,
the core.
I want to know if I have a character defect which is running the show and I may not realize it. So it's going to help me avoid a lot of trouble in my relationships and my life. And my personal health and hygiene and all those things, the health of my family, the people around me, if I can identify when I'm angry so that I'm not acting out of anger. Because then it's not me acting and the good stuff that I might have to offer. It's this spirit of anger, whatever the fuck that means, that might be, acting in the world. And
not good.
That might be where all war comes from. I don't know, just a suggestion.
So in the step 6, there's 7 new defects, greatest hits.
Hey.
What are those?
Well, so so we've all heard of this old-timey religious type talk called the 7 deadly sins. You've been sinning. God sees you when you're, doing stuff in the corner you shouldn't be doing. You should feel ashamed of that, little boy.
And what are they?
They are. So they're the 7 types of self. It's just another, so sin, is a way of saying like, we missed the mark. There's a what do you call it when you're shooting arrows? That sport.
A target, archery?
Archery. It's a Greek term meaning to miss the mark. So, they say if you sinned, it means, you missed the mark.
Oh,
you were
really?
off the mark. Yeah, you didn't know that?
Nah.
Huh. Up 1 on the day today. Yeah, he's probably up 20 before I even got up this
all
morning.
the facts. You got all the facts.
So it's really, when you hear that old-timey word, instead of seeing some, preacher telling you you're a bad person, you might want to say like, oh, it's just where have I missed the mark? And if you're an adult...
This is great whiskey, by the way. This is strong
You
stuff.
cannot tell people that we're drinking while we're doing this, Yeah, we don't have any character defects anymore because we've done the steps. Just kidding. Yeah, it still happens. It happens when
Can
we
we
get into
say
self.
what they are already?
Yes. Okay. So it's the 7 deadly sins. You can Google that. Okay. But we're
right.
gonna get into like what that actually means. I think what it means is it's
Okay, let me
What
tell
are
you what they are. Pride, gluttony, sloth, lust, greed, envy, and wrath.
we've all heard them. We all saw that Brad Pitt movie.
Yes.
Yep. So hang on. We're going.
I want to click.
So each of these is just a pattern. Okay. Again, these are old words.
Right, and pattern
So-
just kind of a repetition of behavior. Yeah?
Yes, and you could say, a repetition of behavior could be a program. So what I found, when I did the program of, the 12 steps, it was actually a reprogram. It was actually, what program are you running? We talked about hypnosis in our very first episode. The idea of like, I'm hypnotized already and I may not know it because I'm running a program subconsciously that I don't realize I'm running. And we're all doing that multiple times. If we're walking down the street, that's a program that, our subconscious brain is built into our body. It's wired in.
And it's almost like these prayers are almost like these, correcting these bugs, right? I say a prayer and I can disrupt a program from running. I can enter in some new code and maybe set up some new way of living.
Yeah, so it's kind of the new identity of I'm not my thoughts and I'm not my emotions. I'm the thing that is hearing the thoughts happen. I am the thing that is, feeling the emotions, but not actually the emotions themselves. So it's the idea of like I'm the computer programmer. I'm the the ghost in the machine.
The architect.
Archetype also. What?
Vis-a-vis.
Yeah, I'm not the archetype. I'm the spirit within the archetype. Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, so when I get into these forms of self, so pride is usually mentioned first, okay? And our literature tells us that pride is it's like the kickoff to the football game when I think about it. Pride happens first, and pride just generally means, so we're gonna run through a bunch of these and like what some other definitions are, but
This is what Russell Brand, effectively God, says that they are.
yeah, he's channeling God, he's
So,
mainlining
do you want
God.
to just read them?
I want to read them. So the first idea is like once I'm in pride, what that means is like I'm putting myself first. That's the idea that I work with pride. It's like so if I'm acting out like sexually or so with lust or with gluttony, with like eating a whole bunch of stuff, I'm like famous for lots of these things. Or if I'm acting out in any, or I'm like extremely slothful and like I'm not doing shit today. When I'm acting out that way, it's probably because imperceptibly, I passed at some point from serving the greater good and a God of my own understanding into just serving me. Like, oh, I'm too tired. I'm gonna nap, And then once I get into self, it's hard to break back out of it. So the idea is like the antidote to pride, I'll just tell you, is humility. Okay, and we're gonna cover that in the 7-step. That's the 7-step principle. It really covers humility. But this is all about, before we can get that humility, that's the antidote to pride and the antidote to all this, missing the mark and sinning. I really need to, if I'm gonna prevent myself from getting into pride, what does it look like once I get into it?
Okay.
Okay?
Yes.
Now let's go. What are these different, forms of self that we get into?
Well, we have the ones from before. So there's self-pity, which is like saying, like kind of living this attitude of, oh, poor me.
Yes. And I will say that's my favorite one, and that's a big one. Like if you have depression,
Yeah.
I hate to say it, but you because it's highly offensive to people with depression because you're probably in the emotion and not the ghost in the machine feeling the emotion and experiencing it that way. If you're in the experience of depression, you might be possessed of self-pity and not even realize it. That's why it might be offensive to be
and
like, I don't pity myself. Oh my God, I'm gonna go sit alone in a room and eat a bunch of ice cream, and think negative thoughts.
Thank you. And I think it's a difference to say, like, people can have real reasons to be unhappy and depressed.
Totally.
And also be in a state that's not serving them.
Correct.
It's not like somebody's at fault or somebody's to blame. It's just to say that this is commonly associated with being in depression.
Oh, it's not blame at all. I mean, if it could be blamed, then it could be corrected, right? But it's more like it's probably running. It's probably run. Look, I was depressed for years. I had suicidal thoughts. I had, all this stuff. I drank to make those things go away.
Yes.
So ultimately, I'm not saying like you're bad if you're depressed. It's really more like you're probably running a program. And yes, you should be seeing a therapist if you're depressed. And if they're prescribing you medication, that might give you a chance to break out of that state, break out of that cycle of self-pity.
Next state is self-centeredness. This is the idea that my feelings are the most important thing in the world. That everything in the world revolves around me, even if that's I hate myself, everyone's out to get me. It's still everything's oriented around me. And the good news for me is actually I'm not that important, and it kind of takes a lot of the pressure off for me.
And again, do you see how humility plays into this? By the way,
Yes.
if you can adopt a humble attitude, it corrects you out of self-centeredness, right?
Yes.
Okay, the next one would be selfishness, and this is kind of a broad term, but who
Cares about that other person.
Oh, right, yeah. Who cares about the other person?
You gotta say it like Russell, and then it makes sense.
Yeah.
Who cares about the other person?
Who gives a pip about the other person?
Okay.
That's went a little sideways there.
Yeah. So, and then we have greed, which is this idea that I want more even though I have a lot.
Right, yeah, I have so much, but I want more, like never enough. If you've ever done cocaine, you've experienced greed. There's never enough cocaine.
That's my favorite thing to do on cocaine is more cocaine.
Yes, they should just call it more. Yeah.
The next one is lust, which Russell Brand tells us is the misdirected drive towards sexual matters.
Yes, misdirected. That's interesting.
Yeah.
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 Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Real smooth.
Okay. Okay.
And then envy is, I want what others have. They have something like, this motherfucker has a job over here. I hear that somebody's got a $500,000 paying job. Oh, I want that. And then it's like, and now I'm feeling some weird shit inside, and I'm like less than or something.
And then sort of similar, but the inverse jealousy is I don't want others to take what is mine. So the idea being I have to protect, there's a limited amount of this, I have a good job and you don't come near it because then I'm not gonna have it. And it's the idea that there's a scarcity and finiteness to the universe and a lack of trust in a higher power, really.
Pride
Next.
we touched on already
Yes.
was, I must be treated within my self-defined protocol.
Okay.
You must treat me how I wish to be treated.
It's tough. But I guess it's the idea that I have this set of rules and this way that the world is supposed to work. And if you don't adhere to those things, these unspoken situations, ideas that I carry around, then you've offended me and you're out of sorts with the way the world's supposed to operate.
Totally, yeah.
And then intolerance is that people should be better. There's no excuses, there's no empathy. Be better, I demand it.
We're up in somebody's business right now. I can just feel it.
Oh, there's more.
Oh, yeah,
Okay.
a couple more. Impatience. Hurry up and do it my way. I just really want to act these out.
Sloth is, laziness, or it's the idea I can't be bothered, it doesn't matter. I associate that in my past feelings of depression with a lot of this, do it later, or who cares.
And arrogance, I love this one because I hate people who are arrogant, and yet when I'm not well, I'm so arrogant. And it's be more like me. And sometimes you get these spiritually arrogant people, and I have been one of them before, by the way, even though I hate spiritually arrogant people. Usually if you hate something, it means it's because you have
You
it.
spot it, you got it.
That's right, yeah.
It rhymes, so it's true.
That's exactly how it works, yeah. So be more like me. I know the way to heaven, don't you?
What is this royalty thing we have going? I like it.
I think it's because we were listening to Russell Brand, and
right.
once you hear the Queen's English.
Flourish the pinky.
Oh, hello, yes.
And the last on this list
Indeed.
is dishonesty, which is this idea of management of narrative for gain. So I'm going to tell a story, shape the facts or the fictions in a way that benefits me, independent of what the reality of a situation is.
So that one was huge for me. I still, to be honest, be honest.
Okay.
So, the idea here is you're gonna feel amazing once you identify some of these things and which are your things. That's what I've learned. All this stuff is about, if I'm drinking to effect or doing whatever it is that if you're doing something in your life to, in effect, to get an emotional outcome that you want, and you're running a program to do that, the idea is that's just generally unhealthy. If you're using something out here to change an emotion in here. The idea is can you rewire yourself so that you can just consciously change the emotion anytime you want to? And can you be clear of things that are going to get in your way of that being able to do that? So if I'm going to things out here to change in here, I'm going to be addicted to those things. If it's going to bring me some moments of joy and peace and happiness, I'm going to be hardcore addicted to those things. So it's really the patterns are names for what those things are.
And so through this step 5, this creating of this list of things and looking at our part in it, what should come out of that is various forms of selfishness come up as themes, you might be like, oh, I think we all have them to some degree, but maybe, for me, it's maybe more self-centeredness and arrogance. And you were saying you suffer from arrogance at times as well.
Yeah, you hear this term, I'm an egomaniac with an inferiority complex.
Yeah.
I have this huge ego, I can't admit that I'm wrong ever, and yet, I feel like I'm so small and I'm constantly trying to prove myself to people. I'm trying to one-up everybody in some small way,
No, I am.
No, I am. I'm a way bigger one-upper. And that's like the fun of it, is you get around this, you get into these 12-step groups and, you start to get around people who are naturally very, they can be, but then it's like this playful environment.
Pointing.
It's this playful environment where you can hey, I need to talk about this because I'm either going to talk about it here or I'm going to go and do it. Yeah. And there's this Alexander Solzhenitsyn quote.
Whoa, reference. I don't even know who that is.
Well, he's a guy that was...
Solzhenitsyn.
Yeah, he was member of the Soviet Party in the Soviet Union, and then he was in the Gulag for a bunch of years. He wrote this...
The old logs.
This gigantic book called The Gulag Archipelago. Really, what he did was, while he was living this life, under Stalin's thumb, basically... he went and fought in World War II. They emptied the Gulag to go fight in World War II. They won the war, and really Russia was a huge hero of that war, just basically throwing people, to die, to keep the war going on Germany's eastern front.
And how does it relate to anything?
Okay, so the bottom line is, after he comes back to Russia, he gets sent back to the Gulag because he had been westernized, because he was a prisoner of war. He was treated terribly because... Okay, so long story short, this Alexander Solzhenitsyn guy, he's sitting in this Gulag after having this terrible run of luck, you would think, and he was like, okay, how am I responsible for this? I could easily blame Stalin. I could easily blame Hitler. I could easily blame these, big evil actors in the world. But how have I personally participated in this? And he wrote this gigantic book that he memorized and had it smuggled out of the camps, and it actually helped, end the Soviet Union. Once the word got out that this experiment wasn't working that well, that they had all these people in these camps. And so the quote that he has is basically, the line between good and evil runs down every human heart. And I'm going to paraphrase a little bit and say, he also says, the worst people on the planet still have a little bit of good in them. And the best people on the planet still have a little bit of evil in them. And you never really uproot it.
I've heard people say before, every angel has a past and every sinner a future.
Where are you getting these? These are solid gold, man.
Yeah.
It's incredible.
I didn't make that one up. But
so the idea is
I will take credit for it, though.
Well, and I think when you have people that are, going towards this purity, if you think that I heard this other one actually recently about sinners and saints. It's way better to be a sinner and know that you're a sinner than to be a saint and know that you're a saint, or to claim that you're a saint. It's way better. Who would you rather hang out with?
I think a saint.
That would be pretty cool. Maybe miracles and shit would happen. But it's the idea that you need to keep the eye on that line in your heart and where it is, because you're never without some kind of evil lurking thing happening under the surface, and it's good to it's like nobody's just 100% good.
Yeah.
You might have something in there that you want to act, you want to tell a lie or something.
And maybe instead of just you can frame it in good versus evil terms, or more be it's kind of fear-driven versus hope-driven motives, for example.
Totally, yeah. And, I'm not here to apply some worldview to anything, but these were things that were useful to me,
Yes, sir. So, it's interesting. I know it says here, which I'm not sure I fully understand, that 6 thoughts and 6 actions are the same. Explain to me what that means. Because, if I go murder somebody, or if I do a lot of murdering analogies. If I go yelling at somebody as opposed to thinking about yelling at them, how is that the same thing?
So the idea is your brain is gonna. So there's this thing called the Sermon on the Mount, which apparently was this this part of this story that we probably all are somewhat familiar with. There was the central character of this story,
Vishnu.
Yes, yeah, basically, went up and said to everybody, actually, you've heard before, thou shalt not kill, but actually, if you have anger with your brother and sister, it's the same thing. So basically kind of saying, the real stuff that's going to happen to you, that's going to feel shitty for you, that might set you on this path psychologically, under the surface, accidentally going towards, a hellish landscape in your life, would be to think that, you're above murder because you've never actually done it. But it's the idea that as a human being, like, we're capable of the worst evils on the planet.
And so I guess it's like to think murder is to know murder as well as an actual murderer.
Yeah, I mean, so here's the idea, okay?
Like you're sold on it.
So, so for me, it's like, if you're studying World War II and you're like, oh, I'm way more like the innocent people or the good guys in that story,
right.
and you're leaving out the bad guys and you're like, oh, I'm nothing like them, you're missing the point of history. The idea is like, okay, how am I possibly related to the kind of human beings who would like kill pregnant women, in the concentration camps? Like, how could I be like that person who then went home to their own families and like didn't seem to have too big of an issue with that?
Right.
So really, it's like when I peered into the darkness within me, I found that I was probably, when I looked at my thoughts and when I meditate every day, I have thoughts that are, very violent, and I don't, I get it, I've been mentally ill, so maybe I'm different than people watching, okay? What I found is, human beings tend to have a lot in common with each other when it comes to thinking. It's like 90% of what you're thinking is exactly what the other person is thinking, and you don't even realize it. Like, we're so much alike because we're humans on the planet today than anything else. So it's kind of insane to try and, look at differences and be like, oh, well, I'm not like that person.
Right.
I'm not like that person.
Well, it's also like, kind of goes back
I'm better
to
than
this,
the murderer
like,
because I've never murdered.
It also goes back to like this like truth telling where it's like, if I can't acknowledge that I have these parts of me, then there's no way for me to deal with them or channel them into positive directions. It's just this hidden, secret, repressed part. When in the reality is, I have murderous thoughts, right? And so I can either figure out ways to manage that, or I can just harbor anger and let it either fester or fester within me. And so we need to acknowledge what's what. Yeah. I still think, it's better I think of murdering you than murdering you, personally. I think for both of us,
for sure,
we would agree.
Yeah, for sure. It's just more of the point of like we all have something inside of us that could take us extremely down a bad path.
Yeah.
All of us have that. And for some reason, most of us never have to really deal with that, side of us,
Yeah.
And yet there are some people in the world who do go down that path.
Panda Express, we're talking about, right?
Yeah. I mean,
I've had some bad nights.
It'd be great if Panda sponsored us, but I guess that's out the window now.
That's out.
Yeah, you just murdered that one, buddy. So, so if I'm going to get in touch with, like, how can I be more like the rest of humanity? And if I can only identify with, the Gandhis of the world and, I'm going on this path. Like, no. Like, when I came to look at what was really happening in my mind and what self-pity was really about for me was, I'm going to keep the world at arm's length because fuck you, I'm in pain, and I think you're part of the thing that's doing it to me. And, like, there's something in there, and all of us have been in a situation before where we've probably broken a law and gotten away with it, and so there's this idea of like justice and mercy, or even like grace. There are people that have done things one time and they've been thrown in jail for the rest of their life, and I may have done those things regularly. Like I drove drunk regularly, never got a DUI, and that's not the most insane thing. The most insane thing was when I went to AA meetings and I heard other people talking about how they got DUIs, I was like, oh, well, I'm not like them. I'm not that bad.
Right.
Or, oh, I never drove drunk with kids in the car.
Right.
Because I didn't have kids.
No one want, yeah.
Yeah, I was more into abortions than having kids, and I'm putting myself above people, and meanwhile, I'm not looking at my own stuff. That's the whole point here, is like, look at your own stuff and look at other people and be like, oh yeah, I could understand how I could be just like them if I were born in their circumstances. I'd be just like them. I'd probably worse.
Yes. And I think like many parts of going through the steps and sort of healing, it's paradoxical in the sense that, by embracing that, I am capable of lust and pity and anger and all these emotions, that I can then be freed of them and actually get a chance to get distance from them in an authentic way, or move out of just kind of, I think in Eastern traditions it's called karma, but basically repetitive thought patterns and repetitive outcomes that they generate, and I can move into something a bit more self-directed and healed instead. Replace those programs.
Exactly. And so you talked about karma, and there's this law, cause and
French, karma.
effect. Well, I think it's Indian, right?
I don't know.
So it's this idea of cause and effect that if you are having if you do good deeds, you would subconsciously expect good deeds to come back to you. That's a kind of a worldview thing. Like if I do good, good will happen to me. But whatever happens if I do a bad thing, then what happens if I introduce a bad thing? Now a bad thing has to happen to me. And okay, well, what if I do a bad thing that's really bad? Does that mean 65 bad things have to happen to me now?
60.
It's hard for our brains are not always the healthiest at discerning these things. I mean, we have a lot of brain power, but we still are operating like little kids in a lot of ways. So, we talked last episode about we have some subconscious pre-verbal ideas about things that have happened in the world or happened with us. That we are going to painstaking lengths in the fourth and fifth step to put some language on these old emotions and old memories to find out what's really going on with them because they happened before words were available to describe. They're just feelings. And now we want to identify what the feelings are as best we can and then come up with this technology of reprogramming, also called a prayer, and see if we can change the negative stuff in us, the negative emotions around these memories so that we can be free of having to feel, shameful about things that happened in our childhood. And that's a pretty universal human experience. From everything that I've seen in my life, I mean, people tend to feel shame at a pretty deep level, and their personalities are kind of built around them. So the sixth step, Alex, we're dealing with a lot of this deep level stuff. I mean, we're talking about changing categorically, so we're getting into this deep stuff. What has your experience been with like how you've been able to change by using the steps and this idea of willingness? Like, what is that? How does that work for you?
Yeah, so a couple things. I think one is, as I walked through the steps and became familiar like with my tendency to be self-centered, right? I can then identify it when it comes up and sort of laugh at it and be like, oh, there's my old friend, and also understand that in the, well, I guess it'll be the 7-step prayer, but whatever things I have, like let me direct them towards some kind of higher power's will. And my same ability to be dishonest and create up stories to benefit me is actually can be directed in ways that are useful in some ways, but I need to be able to identify when they're out of whack. Like if I have just this habit of lying all the time, like I need to be able to nip those things in the bud and use that, creativity for things that are useful. So yeah, I think just that like awareness of my part in it, and also like it's humbling to say, please help me get rid of these things. Let me be the full version of myself that I have in my head of who I could be, and let's just walk through the day a little bit closer to that and let go of the baggage. Or there's this book about the 6th and 7th step called Drop the Rock, and it's the idea I'm swimming with this heavy rock and all these people on a boat are saying, come on, and I'm like, how do I get there? And they're like, quit carrying the rock. And then eventually you could say, okay, I don't need this stuff anymore, and move into that other space. And so the only way for me to do that, because all of my tricks and strategies for helping myself are in the same thing that's broken, right? Or the thing that's incomplete. And so if I can turn these things over to a higher power and say, hey, can you deal with my arrogance for today and let me be useful to you? That seems to work a lot better than me trying to think some plan about how I'm going to be helpful because it's going to help me feel good, and then I'm the best person, and then I'm arrogant again, So that is my answer.
So will. We talked about will.
I don't know him.
Yeah, you're Alex.
Willingness,
sorry.
right.
We talked about willingness earlier in the steps, and willingness. So the idea of what the fuck does will mean?
Yeah.
Okay, my will.
Be done.
Or God's will, or what do these things mean?
Yeah.
So it was explained to me, and I found that this is a very good definition because it seems to have traction for me when I talk about it and think about it. Will is about what you think and want and feel. Okay, so will is, thinking and emotions and desires. So those are all kind of whatever my will, and I've heard it extended in this way, it's also associated with soul, if you've got to say well, my soul feels heavy, that might, be a way of indicating that, I've got some heavy thoughts going on, like I've got some sad, heavy thoughts, or sorrowful. My emotions are kind of heavy. This type of stuff. So when people use these words sometimes you hear love all the time, you hear soul, regularly. I want to know what that actually means for me. And usually what I found is like, no matter who's using it, whether it's religious or non-religious, it tends to bear out when you put these types of, like, will and soul are kind of similarly linked to each other.
And I guess when I think about like willingness, I wake up every day with, energy to do something, right? And I guess willingness or will is, okay, I'm going to direct it this way. So instead of pursuing what makes me feel good in the immediate moment, I'm going to pursue how do I contribute to society? And that same amount of energy, it can go in either direction. There's 100 units. I can do 100 units of fuck shit up, 100 units of, heal something or do something good for the world. And so to me, it's that directing of, what is sort of undirected energy that defines it.
Well, you've got these beautiful birds on your shirt.
That's true.
And I read something that relates to willingness and nipple touching. And it's, we're getting weird. It's the idea of like when you watch a bird, kind of catch one of these, catch a drift of wind or a gust of wind, and you can see them kind of rise without this.
Thermal.
Yeah, thermal, thank you. And you can kind of see them just, feeling their way out, where they don't have to work at all. So am I being the bird that's just like, I'm like flying into a hurricane, or am I turning around and seeing where am I being blown, so to speak, and letting that wind carry me and just going with the flow. Like, what is the flow? Where is the flow happening in my life, and how can I go with it? Where's the natural stuff? And I'm not saying like, go along with the culture of whatever, you're feeling, like do the popular thing. I'm saying, also.
What are you saying?
Also, the sixth step is about getting quiet. After you finish your fifth step and you tell somebody your entire life story, you get it all out there, and it's like taking the biggest shit of your life. You go and you sit quietly, and it's a meditation. It's a meditation, literally when we go through the steps, it's, you finish your fifth step, you immediately go home and you take an hour and you think about all of the stuff that you've done, if you've gotten it all out there. Did I tell every secret that I have to this person who heard my fifth step? Is there something, a person that that comes up there? And you get still and you let any thought flow in that needs to be there, And
you allow for any thought or way of being to be removed, to flow out, yeah?
Exactly. Yeah, so you can identify it. And it's that idea of like, if I'm getting all this stuff out, if there's anything that, we're trying to get rid of all the shit that's going on, that's clogging me up from having a good life and experiencing joy and love and freedom and truth.
Justice.
And yeah, all the good things, Why am I not living fucking all of the good things like most of the time, So I'm trying to identify anything else that's getting in my way that could become a big monster in my life again.
Okay. I see reference here to past prayers from that we talked about last episode.
Correct, yeah.
Why?
Well, so this is a time, so again, these are daily things, okay? So something we haven't talked too much yet is like, what is your daily practice for you to have the best life possible? Like what I found was I was going to drink for the last 4 to 6 hours of the day every day, and often the first few hours of the next day, which would totally throw me off, right? So I had a practice to get the good feelings in my life. I think I probably would have died or killed myself if I didn't have those good feelings happening in my life at some point throughout the day. So every day I need to have good feelings. All right, so it's kind of like this whole, we're going on into this new system of who is the person that I want to be? What are the things that are getting in my way from being that person? What are the thoughts and the feelings and the will that person would need to have to get to the place that person wants to get to? And then how can I help facilitate that? And it becomes a daily practice. And so you can kind of go through the steps. Like when I wake up, I pray. It's the first thing that I do so that I don't let my brain start thinking about all the fears and the anger that I might have.
I've heard it said like every morning I wake up an alcoholic and I have to retreat myself every day.
Yeah, I need to become human. Like that's the highest thing that all of us are shooting for here, right? That's the highest rank any of us can hit as human being. So I'm waking up and I'm trying to become the best version of myself. So I'm immediately saying, okay, every thought that comes through my head, every emotion that I have, I want to give it to the greater good. And how do I do that in a way that's joyful for me too? That I can participate in bringing the best me into the world to help as many people as possible, or do the best work that I can do.
And so these prayers are a way to kind of recenter, like wake up and be like, okay, I'm fucked again, like please help me.
Well, you've talked about it, like you've said it before. So Alex has this very strict regimen that brings so much discipline and joy into his life, right? Which is he wakes up, he prays and meditates right away. And then he has a cup of coffee and starts his day, right? Takes some quiet time and starts his day. That's actually working the steps. So when you have solid things like this, it's, like we say, the steps are just an archetype for change. If you want your day to be the best it can possibly be, it's almost like, well, you're going to go to bed a little bit different and better than you wake up, and you have to kind of let go of some things that you might otherwise hang on to in order to get that outcome. So it's starting the day that way.
Right, and I think, sometimes it could be funny to me, like to say, oh, like here's this set of words, this prayer, and this is how you do it. This is how you connect to God. I'm like, those aren't the words, Or, I'm supposed to get on my knees and pray, or, repeat this prayer for 2 weeks. Seems like this specificity, it's funny, it's like kind of where the rubber meets the road of like, okay, like you want, sometimes this stuff could be up in the air, like kind of vague, but it's like, no, these are the exact things I'm being told to do. Pray on my knees every morning, say the anger prayer, the ideals prayer, things like that. And I kind of chafe at that a little bit, like this, I got to do it my own way. But, I don't have to invent everything from scratch. And if I can look at the intent of something, I don't have to change like the word or the tense, like let me look at the intent and really try to live into that. And that's the point of the prayer, is to experience that shift of mind, not to repeat a sentence, And so can I let go and be open-minded around, okay, I guess these are the words I'm gonna use for this shift. This is the thing I'm gonna do for 2 weeks, and stop arguing with or like fighting against the whole world and just live into what the things that are helpful within it,
Yeah, so when I get, quiet in the morning, I get up, I'm a 5 a.m. kind of guy, these days, because it's before the rest of the world wakes up, and it's like, okay, I'm going to pray first thing so that my mind and my emotions are set towards whatever a loving God that has nothing but good for me would want for me. Well, I'm gonna have a fucking great day if I'm giving it all up that way, right? And then I go and I meditate, and when I meditate, what I find is my brain is trying to think thoughts and take me to fear or take me to anger. And it's like a train. I realize I'm on a train of thought, and I'm like, okay. And now I can jump off this train of thought anytime. And so it's kind of like I'm practicing the tools that I'll need throughout the day. When things get busy and things get hectic, I can jump off those trains of thought and get out of those emotions when they're small before they kind of engulf me and get me into fist fights in the corner, or yelling at something.
I imagine you in like a little train conductor's hat.
It is similar. There's a hood involved. I just, hood it up, and then I get a cup of coffee and I start my day. And at the end of my meditation, I pray again, which is, so the sixth step is like a meditation. Third step is a prayer. Then I get quiet, and some fourth and fifth step things happen. I might realize that I have a resentment or something. I might air that out with God as I'm meditating and being quiet and getting familiar with what's going on. And then the seventh step is also a prayer. We're going to cover that more next episode, obviously. And I get real humble, and I'm like, God, help me remember this moment of like how good the emotions you have in front of me, how good the actions that you have in my day. Like, help me remember how good this feels throughout the day. And so whenever I find myself in a moment of panic, like I get a phone call and it's all hell's breaking loose, it's like, oh, well, I wonder how this will be an adventure, because I know that it's going to be really good today. And no matter what happens, so now I'm being this force for good, whether or not there's a God. It's helping me to get in touch with all these good...
A truth force, you might say.
A truth force, yes, like a satyagraha kind of thing. And it sets my day up. And then 8 and 9 are really about the amends, and so...
We'll talk about those then.
Well, it's if I have any amends to make, that might come to me in this meditation in the middle of my prayer. And so
Gotcha.
They say that this separates the adults from the children. I think it has to do with, can you sit and be quiet and let, be in there with the zoo and just breathe through it.
It's funny, like I used to be put on timeout, like that was the worst. And now I'm like, great, like leave me alone.
I love it.
Yeah, I don't want time in.
Can I take a week? Yeah, can I take a week?
Exactly. Yeah. Well, they say like, I've heard like being a child is like wanting candy and not being allowed to have it. An adult is being allowed to have it and not wanting it.
Whoa.
Yeah.
Haven't got there yet then.
I don't either.
Yeah. Okay, so what is our step 6 challenge here, Alex?
The step 6 call to action.
Woo!
Woo. The step 6 call to action is to sit and really ask every morning for a week, what would this omnipresent, omniscient, all-loving God like for me to do for the day? And ask that he takes whatever isn't useful to that out of the way so that you can pursue that path. And just try to hold that in your consciousness throughout the day.
Yeah, so this idea of will, whatever the greatest good's will could be, if it were, a personality, what would that personality force want to do with you today?
Yeah.
How would it want to live through you?
Party!
Party, baby! Hey, this is the Hall of Fame of parties, okay? Like, when you get into the rooms here, it's all the best party animals that you want to hang out with. The survivors, yeah, of the greatest parties. They're all there. A lot of famous people. If you like a movie star or some music, that person, if they still have a career, it's probably because they're in the pro. There's a lot of us out there who are creatives. Is my point.
Let's wrap it up.
Just herding cats today. So what is step 7's principle? Do you remember?
Do it to it.
That's it. You do it, and you do it to it.
You tell me.
It's humility.
Humility.
Yes, we're going to get humble, and we're going to stay humble because that's where we experience love, the best kind of love that there is.
And that's
all
the
day
next
long, baby.
Transformation masterclass.
It's a master classy thing that we're doing here. It's very classy, for free.
So, say thank you to the people you like.
Thank you, Tyler Duffus, for being amazing. He's our producer at Blackwater Audio. If you have dreams of being a podcaster, you can contact him at Blackwater Audio. Thank you so much to Avery Quest for doing our music. Cannibal is a mouthful. I always feel like I mispronounce it, but it's available everywhere music is sold. That's the music on the track. And then Caleb Bond, 38 State, makes this artwork. It's amazing from old, awesome things. He makes them beautiful. Who do you have to thank today, bro? Are you in gratitude at all?
Who even are you? I would like to thank you all for listening, and we'll see you next time.